Hey, Miss Schroeder here. This video is about the 3 different forms of poetry. Make sure that you have your note-taking sheet out and you're adding to it as we go through this presentation. So when we say forms of poetry, we mean like the purpose or the reason behind why an author decided to write that poem. In some cases, there might be a clear purpose and it's like a right or wrong answer. In other cases, you might be able to just pick one and be, as long as you can explain this is why I think it's that purpose, it could be correct because there could be multiple purposes. But we're going to talk about 3 main forms of poetry, and when we read poems in this class we're going to pick which form, which one of those 3 we think the poem fits into. So let's go through the 3 types, starting with lyric poetry. So lyric poetry is a poem that's main purpose is to express somebody's feelings, somebody's emotions, how somebody feels at this time, how they feel about a subject. It could be how much they love something, how much they don't like something, how sad they're feeling, how happy they're feeling. But if my purpose is to make you feel a certain way or for you to know how I feel, that would be lyric poetry. So usually this would be first person, like, I'm so sad, I can't believe this has happened, or I love you so much, right? Those would all be lyric poems. There's 3 main types of lyric poems that you need to know, some of which we're going to write, some of which you might have heard of. The first type is an ode. So an ode is usually an ode to something, and that means you're like writing your poem to that thing, and you're talking about how you feel about it. So a lot of times you might write an ode to a person, and it would be a very personal poem about how somebody meant something to you. Sometimes you might have done fun like an ode to a pencil, and then you write like, oh, pencil, you are so great. Like it's you describing how you feel about that item, and you're kind of talking to it. An elegy is kind of very similar to an ode. It's also similar to a eulogy, right? If you have a eulogy, something that you often read at like a funeral when you're talking about a person and how they meant to you. An elegy is kind of a eulogy in poem form. It's a very formal poem that's used to describe again how somebody meant to you, how you feel about them. And then a sonnet is very similar to that. Shakespeare is very famous for his sonnets, and most of his were all about love and emotion, and they follow a really strict pattern. They're 14 lines, and we'll talk about the rhyme scheme and what iambic pentameter means. You don't need to know what that means at this point, but you will later on. There are more different types of lyric poetry. We'll talk about a few, but these are the 3 that I want you to be able to recognize and know throughout the unit. Make sure you pause the video whenever you need to write down terms or definitions or just need longer times to go through it. Here's just an example of a lyric poem. So this was to someone like you, right? And so they're trying to express how they are angry and mad at this person. I don't like how things have been now that I've grown into a man. I don't know where to begin, though I hope you do understand. I try to find that man in me so it won't be selfish gain. A few years older you might be. Dear, honestly, why should I explain? If we both feel this way in honesty and in truth, then why would I try to escape ever loving someone like you? So he's talking about his complex of emotions here, right? In his relationship with somebody else. This is all about him sharing his feelings and how he feels about somebody else. That is a lyric poem. Next up, we have 2 different types of, or 3 total, 2 left. The next one is a narrative poem. Make sure you write the definition. That means it's an important thing to write down. That's why my Bitmoji has magically appeared on the screen. A narrative poem is, the purpose is mainly to tell a story. So with a narrative poem, they want to give you details of a story, what the story is about. It has a plot. So it'll say, like, it'll give you a character and then something that's going to happen to that character. It will go through the different events and things that have happened to that character or that scene. It might be like an historical poem where it wants you to know about a moment in our history, or it might just be totally fiction and made up. And therefore, it's going to tell you about these characters and what's happening to them. So it could be about real life or not real life, but the point is it wants to tell you a story of something that has happened. Here's a couple examples that you'll be reading some of these examples later on too. We have a ballad. That's a narrative poem that tends to have a really sing-songy, like it rhymes. We'll talk later about the rhyme structure that it has, where it's trying to tell a story. And then there's an epic, which are usually really, really long poems, like the Odyssey could be an example of that. And these are usually based on history and events that have happened, and they tell the story through a structure, a very like strict structure of like line numbers and rhyme schemes and those different things, which make them a poem. And so those are two examples of narrative poems that are trying to tell a story. So here's an example of a narrative poem. So it's talking about a character they made up, right? Ticklish Tom. And it's telling you all about the different things that he did. He got tickled by his mom. He wiggled and giggled and fell on the floor, laughed and rolled right out the door, all the way to school. And then he got tickled by his friends, laughed till he fell off his stool, laughed and rolled right out of school, right? So it continues to tell the story of what is happening to Ticklish Tom. Definitely feel free to read and pause and read the rest of this narrative poem. Last one is descriptive poetry. So we have lyric poetry that tells you my emotions, how I'm feeling about something. Narrative wants to tell you a story. And the last one is descriptive poetry. This wants to paint a picture. I just want you to know what something looks like, right? A lot of times a poem can be a dedication to something. I want to be able to paint a picture. I want to describe. I want you to get to know something really well. And so when I was writing like a lyric poem about a person, that's where I want to share my emotions about that person. But maybe I just want to describe a person, or I want to describe what it's like at my cabin, or I want to describe, in this case, what happiness is. Descriptive poems tend to appeal to the senses. So that describes what something looks like, what something feels like, what something tastes like. Those are descriptive poems. You're going to be writing some of these as well. So examples, very famous one, Summer Shower by Emily Dickinson. It's describing a summer shower, so raining in the summer, right? And kind of what that looks like, what that sounds like. She uses a lot of fancy words trying to build that imagery, it's called, where you build an image in somebody's brains. That's called imagery. And so she had half a dozen kissed the eaves and made the gables laugh. A few went out to help the brook that went to help the sea. The sunshine threw his hat away, the orchard spangled song. So it's all these different descriptions of what's going on, what this looks like in this scene. That's a descriptive poem. So you're going to look at a few poems and you're going to be asked to figure out, do you think they are lyric, narrative, or descriptive? The first one is called The Charge of the Light Brigade. So I'll read it. You could read it to yourself as well, thinking about what type of poem is this. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward. All in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not thou the soldiers knew. Someone had blundered. Theirs was not to make reply. Theirs was not to reason why. Theirs was but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them. Volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell. Boldly they rode and well. Into the jaws of death, into the mouth of rode the 600. So looking at that, thinking about what do you think their purpose was? Were they trying to share emotions? Trying to tell a story of what something happened? Were they talking a lot about what something looked like, what something felt like? Think about what the purpose of. There's also great use of repetition and rhyme in there as well that we can look at later. The next one is an ode to a pie. So that ode is a key word, right? What type of poem has an ode? Ode to pie. It tastes good. Chocolate is the best. It is sugary. Ode to the taste. It swirls in my mouth. It is good in my stomach. It is sweet. Ode to my mouth. It lets me eat pie. It chews it for me. I am grateful. Ode to pie. It tastes good. Chocolate is the best. It is sugary. So thinking about what that might be. Ode is an indicator. And then my brain's like, maybe it's between two. But am I really talking about how I feel about it, or am I talking about it in general and kind of what it looks like? So to me, it could be one of the two, but I want to think which one do I feel like it best falls under. The next one, beware the woman. Beware of a woman with a broken heart. She used to be a girl. They never see pain coming when it's just the start. But a little experience let the truth unfurl. She'll take what you have and throw it away, just like a little girl. But batter eyes and beg you to stay, and you'll give it another whirl. Beware the woman with a broken heart. She'll break yours to make amends. She'll claim that the two halves are better apart. She thinks that's how her story ends. Beware the girl with a fragile heart. She'll become a woman one day. Treat her right from the very start. Don't be the one to hurt and run away. So again, a lot of times I have to think it could be quite a few. So is this one, do you feel like it's sharing an emotion, how they're feeling at a particular time? Is it telling you a story, like it does specific details, like this happened to this person, then this happened? Or is it trying to like paint a picture? Is it talking a lot about what something looks like, what something tastes like? So for me, even though this one isn't necessarily in first person, I kind of feel like it was a little bit in first person. It feels very personal to me. Which one do you think would be if I want to share like a personal thing that has happened and how I feel about it? Next one, a snowy wonderland. In the depths of the woods, where tigers prowl and hares dare not go, stands a grand tree layered in an icy glaze. Snow seemingly placed precisely upon its leaves, the clouds threaten a blizzard, while a lake pulls on a blanket. Yet the tree stands tall, not afraid of a little more snow. But as a blizzard rages on and white fluff becomes weights, its many arms start to slump, tired of carrying the world. The wind moans in sympathy, and thunder laughs proudly. The tree rips its way free of its white funeral sheet. It's one of my favorite ones. I think it's just beautiful. But again, what is its purpose? Am I telling you a story? Is it narrative? Am I telling you how I feel about something? Or am I painting a picture, descriptive? All right, this is the last one. I have another clue. It's a sonnet. How do I love thee? How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and the breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight. For the ends of being and ideal grace, I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use. I love thee in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with the love I seem to lose. With my lost saints, I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. This one is a great use of punctuation. When we talk about the use of punctuation, we could pull this one up. Right now we're looking at the purpose. So sonnet is a good clue. But again, is she telling a story? Like, has she developed characters and she's talking about them? She really describe how something looks, feels, tastes like? Like, does it really paint a picture? Or is it an emotion that is being expressed? And that is our practice of the 3 forms or purposes of poetry. Hopefully you have your note-taking sheet out and we will continue to practice this. See you next time.